Good evening and welcome to June's broadcast. I hope you're all very excited and looking forward to the football, which starts tomorrow. I know we are in our household. So this is really exciting. We get to meet again, and tonight we have Colin Baron is going to be speaking to us. I'll introduce him a bit more in just a second. Before we go on, I want to just flag up, we have a weekend. If you are able to get to Northamptonshire in October, we have the dates, the 21st to the 22nd of October, where we're going to be meeting with those that have just currently started church planting or on the cusp of it. And we're going to get together for a time of encouragement and prayer and teaching and sharing and generally having some fun. So if that's something that you're interested in, then and you're able to get to that, then I want you to email this person, and her name is Louisa. That's Louisa at the-hill.co. Okay, so if you're interested in that weekend, please email Louisa and she will give you some details. Fantastic. So let's explain the format of broadcast. I think that we've got some new people logging on this evening, so a special welcome to you guys. How we run things is for the next half an hour, we will give time over to Colin to speak. And tonight he's speaking on the philosophy of church planting, really looking at how Jesus did it. And after that, you will have a chance to ask your questions. This is the genius bit about broadcast. So if you are logged in and listening live, you can click the Q&A little button, and you can then type in your questions, which will come up for us to see. At the end of Colin's talk, I will then put these questions to him. If you're not logged in and you want to also ask a question, you can text right now at any time during the talk at broadcast. So I say text, it's Twitter at broadcastcp. So all one, at broadcastcp. You can tweet your questions and they will also magically appear. So there you go. Anyway, it's my privilege to hand over this evening to Colin. He is with us. He has church planted for probably about 30 years, maybe just over that. He is the founder of Broadcast, so this is a real honour. And I know church planting is possibly one of the most things that he's the most passionate about, other than the gospel. So here we go. Colin, we're handing over to you. Please keep your questions coming in and we'll come back to them in a bit. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Hannah. So it's great to be speaking tonight, and I want to speak on a verse that has been really significant in the way I approach things and think about things. But before I get onto that, I want to just go back to the very first church I planted, and that was way back in about 25-30 years ago in Bourne End, and a number of us went to plant a church. And after a couple of years, Terry Virgo, the movement that we're in and the leader, he came to appoint me as an elder of the church. And that evening I remember sitting there on the front row, some worship time, and then there was a time that people could pray, and if they had a word from God, they could give a word from God. Well, what started to happen was words were being prayed and given that had nothing to do with the eldership appointment, and they had everything to do that I was going to be a pioneer. In fact, it got a little, when I say ridiculous, it was I had people prodding me. They were sitting next to me thinking, saying, what about that? And because fundamentally it was there to be a shepherd of the church we had planted, in all intents and purposes for us to be there for the next umpteen years. So Terry gets up to do his preach before the appointment, and he says this. He said, all day long I've been wrestling with my preach. He said, I've got some preachers, and probably from Titus, Timothy and others, that I normally do on an eldership appointment, just going through the qualifications of an elder, etc. He said, but I haven't been able to get out my head that I should preach from Joshua chapter 1. And he said, it just didn't seem to fit about the pioneer going into the promised land with what we're doing. He said, but actually, in what I've just heard, it is everything to do with what Colin and Mary, I think, are called to. So I had the interesting evening of being appointed as an elder and almost sent simultaneously in terms of a conceptual kind of commissioning. And so that was, I say, numbers of years ago. We then moved and planted another church in Swanley, and then moved again to Manchester, where not only have we started probably 12 churches in the northwest area, but loads of other churches we've catalysed. We've lived in America, helped start churches there, South Africa, etc., etc. So out of that time, something really extraordinary happened. And but what happened was, when I planted my first couple of churches, I remember that I would go into Acts chapter 2 and look at how the church was planted there, and then look at the kind of church as it gathered, you know, devoted to prayer, devoted to the apostles' teaching, devoted to generosity, breaking of bread, etc. And I realized that what was happening was I was actually using something that was part way on in the gospel, not where it all started, i.e. that this was a church that actually was after Jesus died, rose again. It was 3,000 people saved, then, you know, thousands more saved. But the people who were leading that, Peter, etc., had actually started their journey pioneering 3 years before. And so I started going back into the Gospels and thinking, okay, how did Jesus pioneer? Let's go right back to there. And that's where I came across this verse in Mark chapter 1:38. And I'll give some biblical context to this, but the verse is this. He's talking to Peter and his very early 2 or 3 disciples, apostles, and he says this: let us go somewhere else to nearby villages so that I can preach there also. That is why I've come. And that is why I've come was a big statement, and it's kind of tucked there in the narrative. And so I just started trying to think, wow, why did he make that big statement? And so let's just look at the context quickly. So basically, Mark 1:14, we get Jesus having been baptized, having gone out into the desert. He comes back into Galilee, and it says that he comes preaching the good news of the kingdom of God. So the first thing I realized is this: every church plant starts with somebody. Now, this was the great pioneer, Jesus Christ. But fundamentally, one person going in to an area and preaching the good news of the kingdom. And so that one person we see in Jesus then found some fishermen and made a big call. You know, give up your day job and I'll make you fishers of men. So this one person then gathered a little core team, a little group of people. And that's exactly, as I realized, how we've done it time and time again. And we read then, as Mark 1:21, that as they follow him, Jesus starts to teach in the synagogue. He starts to cast out demons. He starts to do miracles. And so there's a little band of brothers, effectively, and with Jesus leading them, suddenly started to see things happen. And then we get to Mark 21, chapter 1, verse 21, and basically Peter invites Jesus back to his mother-in-law's house. And I guess they're tired, they need a rest. The trouble is, when he gets there, his mother-in-law's in bed ill. So before he can have his tea, he has to heal her. So you have this amazing situation. She gets healed and then waits on them and gives them a meal. But what happens is, news of what had just happened gets out everywhere. So the whole village, or the whole town, I think it was 1,500 people, they say, in Capernaum, that's I think what they reckon, came to the house. And Jesus healed people, saw people be delivered of demons. And so they went to bed. Very, very early in the morning, Jesus leaves the house and finds a solitary place, which is often what we see him doing. And it's at that place that this verse comes, because what happens is he's praying and Peter wakes up, and what's happening is outside his house, there's crowds of people and they're wanting Jesus, and he's looking around the house, no Jesus. So him and the little band go and find Jesus and basically say kind of these words: come back to the village, come back to Capernaum, the town. There's crowds there waiting for you. And so we get Jesus saying those amazing words: we're not going back to Capernaum. I want to go to the nearby villages, because that is why I have come. And I realized that actually you've got two philosophies of ministry colliding at this point. You've got Peter, I say a philosopher of ministry, I don't think he's thinking those sort of terms, but he's actually thinking, there's crowds of people here, come back, let's do something in Capernaum. And you've got Jesus with a commission to go to the whole of Israel. And I just want to just briefly look at Peter, because, you know, you could say, was he not doing a good thing? But actually he had some good reasons to stay. I mean, first reason, as I've mentioned, there was crowds there. And I think I would be very tempted to stay if the whole village was there. And it says not only with the whole village there, but other people as well. So it was not it was a reasonable request. And often I know people who want to stay because of there's just lots of people to be reached. I think the second thing, which was a good reason, is that more people needed healing. It's interesting when you look at the biblical narrative that it says many people got healed the night before. When Jesus went to other villages later on, it says everybody gets healed. So it seems to me there's a Peter saying, hey, there's some more people back there needed healing. These are good reasons not to actually go anywhere else. And the third thing, which is, it says that news about him spread quickly to the whole region of Galilee. So actually, not only were the people from Capernaum coming, but actually there were people willing to travel to see Jesus. There were three reasonable reasons for Jesus not to move away from Capernaum. But actually, there's a better reason. And that's what Jesus, first of all, was trying to do. He was trying to say there's a different philosophy that we need. There's a different mandate for us now. And I got three, I think, reasons that Jesus gave this quite abrupt statement, fundamentally. First one was this: God had spoken. And God had said, you need to go, Jesus, to every village, every town in the whole of Israel. It was a commission from God. In fact, you pick that up when he sends out the 12. He says, go, but only to the lost sheep of Israel. So there was a kind of, when I say restriction, I mean, it's not a bad restriction, which is the whole of Israel, but it's almost like in the 3 years that Jesus had, that was his mandate. And we know that he died for the world and that he's going to send everybody to the whole world. So Jesus loves the world. So, but in terms of that, Capernaum was too small a thing for his 3 years. Israel was where he needed to go. So that was the first thing. It was actually, he was doing what the Father told him. And that's what we read about Jesus. He always did what the Father said. The second reason, actually I've just touched it, is that he had to go to the lost sheep of Israel. So that was the kind of scope of his ministry. I picked that up now, so I won't go any more into that. The third reason is this: he wanted to teach his apostles a massive lesson. You see, they were back in home territory. All their friends were there. His mother-in-law was there. His wife obviously was there. For Peter especially, this was known territory. He didn't want to leave home. Jesus wanted to teach him that his mandate was to the rest of the world. He was now going to be a church planter. He was going to be a preacher of the good news. He was going to make disciples. And so something had to happen for Peter early on for him to get into his psyche, into his head, that actually they were movers, they were church planters. So it is really interesting that having done that for 3 years, when they planted this great church in Jerusalem, it got stuck. Now, it got stuck with thousands, tens of thousands of people, but effectively, that was it. They did a little skirmish down to Samaria. They did some other things until persecution came. And in the persecution, that very mandate, which was, this is why I've been sent, this is why I've come. Actually, that's the apostles, the early church got hold of that, the fact that actually they were here for the world now. Jesus said, go into all the world. And so this whole thing of being, the philosophy of staying because something's happening, whether it's in Capernaum or in Jerusalem, is too small a thing. And actually, we have a mandate to go into all the world. We're to be mobile. We're to get out there. Phil Moore, in one of his commentaries, quotes Vincent Donovan. He says this, it's fascinating. He said, Paul planted a church in Philippi because he stayed there just several days, just a few days. So he planted a church in several days. He then planted a church in Thessalonica because on 3 Sabbath days, he reasoned with them in from the synagogue. So 3 weeks he was there. Paul concluded after 9 years of planting churches in Eastern Mediterranean that there was no more place for him to work in those regions. 9 years, the whole of that Mediterranean in his part was church planted. This writer goes on to say, there's something definitely temporary about Paul's missionary stay in one place. There's something of deadly permanence in ours. And I think what Jesus was trying to get into the apostles was, if we were going to be a church planting movement, something had to be mobile, had to see the bigger picture. So next thing that I want to pick up is that basically, if Jesus had stayed in Capernaum, he would have actually been only having partial success. And in fact, after that, he says he went from village to village, and some villages saw everybody healed. I mean, it was just remarkable. But it's very easy to settle for partial success. I think a lot of people settle. You know, they work hard to get 100, 200, 300, 400. I mean, that sounds great, doesn't it? You know, but sometimes for some people, it is just partial success. You see, unless Jesus went to every village in Israel, it actually was only partial success, even if he saw everybody healed, because the mandate, commission for God on his life, 3 years of ministry, was for the whole of Israel, for Paul, etc., etc. And so actually what happened is, when Jesus was going in one village in Matthew 9:35, he saw everybody healed and taught. And then when he was coming out, it says this, he saw the crowds, this is Matthew 9:36, and had compassion on them because they were harassed and helpless like a sheep without a shepherd. Well, that couldn't have been the village that he was in, because he said everybody got healed. Something moved Jesus in his mind's eye, I think, to see the whole of Israel that he had not managed to get to yet. In fact, the narrative really makes that very clear. And that compassion on him, he realized that he'd only had a few months, in fact, a year maybe or two left. He's not going to do it at that kind of at that pace. And so he said to his apostles, the harvest is plentiful, the workers are few. Pray the Lord of the harvest to go. And then what he did, a massive radical thing, that great little band that were together, that were forming into a great tight good community, he made into number of twos. He basically said, now you go in twos. And basically he 6 times increased his ministry at a stroke with a radical move. And it says this, he names, if you go in Matthew, he names them. This was a big deal. So these 12 are named, and then they're sent out in twos. And if we're going to see a church planting movement, something that's got to move in us with compassion, to take some radical steps to actually start getting people out of the comfort zone of this nice, good community group and into twos and out there. But the thing is, just a chapter or two later, we see it wasn't good enough for Jesus, because even multiplying sixfold was not going to get the job done. And so basically he called 70 others, or 72, but let's go for the 70. And it says this, it's something was in him that says we have got to multiply by 35-fold if we're going to see the whole. So he calls these 70 and makes them go out in twos. I mean, this is radical, because in Jesus's mind, he's got 3 years. And if he's got 3 years, fundamentally, radical decisions have to be made. And the interesting thing is, these are called the others. They're not even named now. First 12 are named. These are now others. If you're going to get church planting movements going, it's the others. Because actually, the named ones, the ones that were the apostles, you know, some of the senior leaders who needed to be on the move, actually there needed to be a whole crowd of others. And we actually see that in Acts of the Apostles. That actually it was Barnabas who went to Antioch. It was Peter and John that went down to Samaria. So some of the named people went, but to start with. But then when persecution came, it says men of Cyrene went to Antioch, and suddenly the others were on the move. And when the others are on the move, something extraordinary started to happen. There was a breakout that was unnamed because so many people were on the move. This is, for me, what I long for, and I love. We've planted lots of churches, and most of them are with others. That's the bottom line. They're unnamed people, and they are making things happen. So I want to now just bring this a little bit into some conclusion, and I want to look at how do we apply this to what we are doing. You see, I went back to Jesus could have settled. Now he's Jesus, so he wouldn't have done. So please, but I'm using him as the pioneer, the kind of the one who's teaching us, the one that actually we should be following and actually reproducing after. That he had a mandate which meant that success was getting to as many places as possible before that terrible day and great day when he was crucified for our sins, that actually the whole world could be saved. And so basically what happened was, and I want to pick up this on the 72, because you get this interesting thing. When Jesus sent out the 12, he virtually gave the same instructions to the 12, to the 72. But I think there's one or two, I think, little interesting things with the 72. First of all, he says to them, go to the villages before I get there. So I've not got the text in front of me, but it's almost like, get there first. Pave the way for me. And it's like Jesus with these needs to be very close to them. That he's going in very quickly after them. I think you see when they've actually finished this missionary trip and come back to him, Jesus is saying these fantastic things. He's saying, hey, while you were there, I saw Satan fall from heaven. And it says this, he praised the Lord. And it's as if Jesus is almost with them. Do you know? And it's like he's sending them. But he's teaching the apostles, I think, hey, when these others go, you've got to be close in there. Not absolutely, they've got to do it. But somehow he's training them. He's praying for them. He's actually almost in his mind, he's seeing what is happening. And when they come back, he's so happy. I remember preaching last week, and I said, do you want to make Jesus happy? Look at this verse when he sends out 72. He is delighted about what they're doing. You know, if we can mobilize loads of people, we're going to make Jesus happy. Because he loves the whole world. And the whole world needs to hear the good news. When you go down this route, you know what happens? We start training tons of leaders. And we found in Manchester that over the years, we've trained lots of leaders. And I was just thrilled the other day. One of my team said, "You realise, Colin, that one of our students, who's not a student anymore, he's mid just 20s, got married. He's now down in South London and he's leading a church plant. He was with us and he helped us plant when he was second year student, one of our meetings. I said to some of our guys, be a student, plant a church and we'll train you." He's now with his wife, plant a congregation. Another one of our students who helped us plant a little group in Salford 2 years ago, something like that, he graduated. He's now in Japan because he did Japanese as a language. He's got a fiance, I think, out there. You know what he's doing? He's leading a congregation because he helped us pioneer with us behind him. Now he's out there. We've got another couple who are leading 2 of our congregations now because they went on this journey. See, what happens is people keep saying to me, where are all the leaders? Well, the leaders are the 70 others that Jesus was just behind, was rooting for, was actually giving them some space to grow, but not space to die in terms of that it all would crumble. And he was there with them. My philosophy is basically, let's do what Jesus did. Let's follow the great pioneer. I was at a conference as I closed that there was a prophetic word. Needs to be weighed, I guess. You know, the movement should be 400 churches, which probably means 320 churches to be planted. I'm thinking to myself, if that's going to happen, we need to do it the Jesus way. We need to get hold of the fact that to do 300, you need something to move in your heart. You need something that mobilizes not only named people, and when I say named people, there's senior leaders who have been building churches who need to be on the move. But actually, they need to be on the move with 70 others who are on the move again. And actually, that's how movements all around the world happen. And my desire, I'm 60 years old this year, my desire is we have church planting movements that are similar to what's going on in Asia, in India, in Latin America, in the UK, right across the continent of Europe. That's absolutely what I pray for, live for, and I believe just getting under the skin of what happened in the Gospels and seeing it, how Jesus was trying to model it for his apostles, I think is a good start. Okay.
It's really great to hear your heart. I hear you preach that at the end. So this is fantastic stuff. We've got a number of questions that have kind of come in throughout your talk. So they're kind of, I'm not quite sure which way to go, but we'll go with the one that came in last. Before I do that, somebody has asked this question. I just want them to clarify. So we'll give you a moment to tweet back in. It's how do we strike the balance between space to grow and space to die? So if you've asked that question, if you wouldn't mind just tweeting again a little bit more clarity to that, because obviously we want to have your question answered. We probably just need a bit better, more helpful wording on that. Okay, so question that came in last was this one. If someone or two, as we're saying, sending out the twos, are feeling called to go out, to move, what would be your first bits of advice for them?
Talk to someone who's a church planter. Depends what your leadership team are, and because talk to them as well. So get advice. So that would be the first thing. You need to be sent. You need to be helped, but fundamentally, you need to talk to a church planter, someone who's on the front. I've just sent, there's a couple going out to Europe, and I said to them, one of the things first thing you need to do is talk to people who are out there. So that would be the first thing. Get into the environment of church planting training. Get into a sphere, into a world where people have got faith for you. Check out that you're okay to do it. So that's where your elders will be really helpful for you, because but there are some people can have faith for you and some people can't. That's what I found as well. So you need to have both. You need to have those who have got a caring remit for you, to make sure you're handling your money well, you're handling your family well, you're handling yourself well. All those things are really critical as a church planter. But you also need to be in an environment where people have got faith for you and to be trained. So that would be, I don't know.
Fab. Okay, that's really helpful. We've had clarification of that question, so thanks to that person. So let's ask that next. There you go. You said that it's important to give young leaders space to grow without giving them space to die. How can we make sure we give both opportunity and support to young leaders?
Let me give you an example from this week. I met a second-year student who's been with us, say 2 years now, and my next church plant's in the city centre of Manchester. And so I sat down with him. I said, because he came to me, said, I want to be trained to church plant. I said, brilliant, let's start now. So basically, I've got 2 or 3 people who are interested in helping me on the first call group. So I basically said to him, find me a coffee shop where we can start meeting. I've got a book, which I said, I'm going to find you a book, Total Church. I just needed a random book, effectively, that's got some Bible studies in. I said, go, I'll come with you each week. There'll be some weeks that I won't. You make it happen in terms of organise it, get the venue, and I'll be there. So fundamentally, what am I doing there? I'm saying, so he basically trundled up into town, texted me a couple of places. One of them's going to cost 50 quid. Can we afford it? Probably. There's other places can't. So what I'm doing there is I'm giving him a bit of space. Has he got a bit of gumption? Can he go and do it? But I'm there with him. When I first came to Manchester, I started at 3 churches simultaneously, one on Tuesday night, one on Wednesday night, one on Thursday night. And I did exactly this. I found 3 singles or couples, said, gather some people in your home and I'll come. But what I'm doing is I'm coming, but letting them gather, giving them the tools to do the Bible study. I'm sometimes teaching, but often I'm there. I'm just rah-rahing for them. And actually, then we're praying and then we're feeding back. So basically, you do that all the time. Jesus, when the apostles launched the church in Jerusalem, and when Paul launched the church in Ephesus, it basically said this, that the apostles went house to house and taught, and went publicly and taught. Well, house to house, I think, was going to some of the house churches, house groups that people had gathered. If you look at Acts 2, 3,000 people, I think some of these 70 were gathering people. I can't think of how else it would have worked. But these people have been trained by Jesus, who were in Jerusalem, some of them were gathering. And then the apostles went house to house. So fundamentally, what were they doing? They were actually supporting, helping, getting alongside. So I think lots of people are either given the dying is go into the city centre, get on with it. Well, actually, it's just hard. But the other thing is, I'll do it and you just come along with me. That's not teaching them how to gather. So giving them that little bit of rope. Now, I'm giving them a little bit of rope, second-year student. If it had been someone else, I might have said, which I have done, do it, I'll come 3 weeks' time. Just start. Because they're more mature. I've got more confidence. You know what I mean? More confidence. So I feel like the main thing is too little tension and for people. I mean, when I say tension, doesn't stretch them, doesn't really help them. Too much, and they have a breakdown. But a bit of tension that means that they feel, hey, I've got to pray some new people in here. I mean, I remember a single girl came. I said to her, let's start a church in Bolton. So she said, how do we do it? I said, you invite your friends, I'll come up. So that's exactly what happened. I turned up with a carload of people. She had 3 of her friends. With this church of 120, maybe 40, they've planted another church, they bought a building, all came out of that. But there was some responsibility, ownership there. She grew. People grew. Is that?
Yeah. Yeah, brilliant answer. Really, really good. Good examples. Let's have this one then. How do we show the unnamed others that they are appreciated and valued in the work?
Wow, massive. If you read the story of Jesus sending out the 72 and look at the massive appreciation that he gave them when they came back, it's a good model. We've got to celebrate them. We've got to. So in a sense, they're unnamed in terms that they're not going to be named in a book. They're unnamed because you're not going to see a website with some of the names, you know, Church of 500, etc. But they're always named to somebody. They would have been named to Jesus. So it's not that they were unnamed in that respect. It's just they were ordinary. There was too many of them to put in the narratives. That's so we give them massive respect. I've just talked about 4 people on my talk who are now running congregations around the world in their 20s. I mean, if they're listening to this, well done. Do you know? But the reality is, you're saying well done all the time. You're giving massive feedback, appreciation. So I teach regular on, we have to appreciate everybody. We have to look and say thank you. I say thank you to everybody. As a bus conductor, whether it's Asda's, I'm just always saying it's just an appreciation. If you can appreciate everybody, then you genuinely will automatically appreciate people going on. And we need to teach the church to appreciate. You know, when someone gives me a cup of tea on a Sunday, I say thank you. When someone gets there early, I say thank you. It's just, so there's a general, we teach it. Virtually all I've taught on in this last half hour, we're going to do a section on our church planting thing next year. We're going to unpack the whole thing. But genuinely, the unnamed are named to the person sent them. They are appreciated. I don't know if that's, I could go on and on.
Yeah, brilliant. Their names are known. We've got another question. Peter had to get into his psyche early that he was a church planter. How do we get people around us to get this same mentality?
You get them on broadcast. No, genuinely, one of the reasons we set up broadcast was because we realized we needed to get people into the world that they could do it. And the reason, Hannah, you're running an over the 24 hours is because we want to get people who think they might be able to do it into the environment of people that are doing it. So I think it's getting into the right environment. I talked to numbers of people at a festival, Bible Week, a couple of weeks ago, and I just realized that they were just waiting for somebody to say you can do it. And basically they were in sometimes a place that was like a Capernaum. Please stay here, let's build in Capernaum. And in their heart was go. So we need to get more people. So I would encourage people to get onto the broadcast, only because it gets you into another world that's being and there's other worlds as well, but you catch things in the right people. So I feel like people are around me get hold of the fact that they can do it. There's a faith dynamic. Sometimes I've realized that if I want to heal this, pray for the sick, if I need to get around a faith person, I need to get around someone who's can impart something to me. So I think there's a principle across, many things, not just church planting. So that would be my thing. The reason we multiple church plants, the nice thing about the 70 is they all came back and all chattered. So there was a camaraderie, and you can imagine the people who were not going but they were around Jesus, this chatter of 30 teams coming back saying, actually, even the devil, Satan, we're casting out demons. You can imagine that it just rippled through everybody. I guess if Jesus did another one, there'd be hundreds going, especially when they heard that he was so happy because they went, So, yeah, be around the right people who can give you faith and energy.
Brilliant. And now this question follows on nicely, because you're somebody who obviously is called to church plant. And you talked about earlier about living with a sense of temporary stay. And that's something in a church planter. How have you coped with that? How have you found moving on then when God has kind of prompted you to move to the next place?
Okay. We've lived in Manchester 20 years, apart from 2 years going to America. So yeah, how about that for temporary? But actually, there's something temporary in our spirit when we look at Manchester. First of all, it's 3 million people. We're on our 12th church plant. So we've moved house once in Manchester. We've done 12. We've got a numbers through the west coast of England. We've got 2, one in Munich, one in Dresden. We've got 2 or 3 in the United States that we moved over there for 2 years just to help them. So sometimes I think that we think all the time that you've got to move house. In our day and age, you don't sometimes have to move house. You just have to look at a region. So when Paul went to Ephesus, he was there 3 years, but churches were planted, it says, right through Asia. In fact, it makes this comment that the whole of Asia heard the gospel. But we know it was Epaphras, I think Epaphroditus, who planted, I think, Colossae, etc. But something in Paul saw, actually, it was not enough to have a big church in Ephesus. And when I came to Greater Manchester, there was something of that mobility, but I didn't have to move my kids each time. It was not going to happen. We moved 5 times. We have been pretty mobile. I mean, I say we actually went to America for 2 years in the 20-year stay here. So I think there's something in your spirit and in who you are that says sometimes you've got to move, but I don't think we're very good at, like I said, I came here, first thing I did was start 3 churches off the bat, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. So I just needed a house, a car, 6 people, 3 churches. And that's, but sometimes you do need to move as well. So I think we've lived in both, and there are seasons. And sometimes I say this to people, watch your seasons. So we know that when kids are going to high school, there's a window of opportunity. When kids are going to uni, there's a window of opportunity. When they're between kind of 0 to 10, 11, we've found it's easier to move them than not. So there's people now early retiring. It's a window of opportunity. And some people miss the windows of opportunity because they're just trying to wait. So I'm always thinking, let's look at the seasons. I do believe there's seasons of life that actually make it helpful. So I don't know. I forgot the question actually.
That's really good, but there's a follow-up one to it, so this is helpful. In terms of church planting again, how do you decide where the next place is to plant?
Oh. I have a number of factors. One is I'll do the spiritual one to start with. I was down in a meeting in Coventry, I think 2 years ago, running a meeting, and a guy I don't think I'd talked to, I've probably met, passed me, said, "You've got to plant a church in Didsbury," and walked out. not in my head. Now, Didsbury's 2 miles from where I live. I actually rang somebody to find him so I could actually make sure I heard it, because I was packing up to come home. Occasionally that happens, and we've just started. Got one of my key couples. Now I've got 20 people. And actually, if you can pray, we need a venue. So anybody who's listening to this, pray for a venue in Didsbury. But so sometimes God speaks prophetically like that. I actually sometimes feel that when you get something like that, it means it might be a bit harder because you need something to fall back on. The other thing for me is I just go to the next place. So we're in Fallowfield, which is a student area. The guys in student area, when they get to their third year and actually get to postgrad and start graduate work, they tend to move about a mile south. So we started one at Withington. Got 40 or 50 people there, and they're all postgrads in the main. So we just, and the next one is Didsbury, which we had a word for. Then the next one after that is Chawton. So I just feel Paul just went, I didn't need a word to go to the next one, I don't think. I think he just went city. And occasionally, like Philippi, it says the devil stopped him going somewhere, the Spirit stopped him going somewhere, and they saw a dream of a vision of a man from Macedonia. So that's like the prophetic word. But that was not usual even in Paul. He went and did it. And the other thing is, I say, the girl who was in Bolton turned up at our church when we just started 30 people. She was in a prayer meeting. She lived 30 miles away. I thought, what are you traveling 30 miles for? Might as well start a church. She's there. She never even thought about it. So by the end of the prayer meeting, we'd actually launched. I said, we're going to launch Bolton Family Church tonight with Sue. So that's exactly, we named it, claimed it, which I don't think I believe, but that's exactly what we did. And next week we started a group because she was there. And it's 30 miles. Why travel 30 miles? I say they've got the building, they've got a great church, and they've planted another church. So is there some people there? Is it the next place? Does God specifically speak? When we came to Manchester because the movement I'm in asked me, where should we plant next? And actually it was when there was a massive recession in the Thatcher years, and some people moved. So I looked and I realised 2 couples had moved to Manchester who had written to the movement saying, if there was a church there, we would love to help you start one. And 2 people had moved to Swindon, I think. So I said to the movement leaders, you've got some people moving. Let's go with them. So in the end, it was who's going to lead it. So in the end, I got, well, another story, but that's how we came to Manchester. So that was like persecution, but it's not persecution because it's economic migrants, but it's actually following migration. And so it's not rocket science. And in the end, we can overcomplicate it. When they went to Antioch, it said they just talked about Jesus as they were moving, and the gospel spread.
Brilliant. We've got a couple more questions, so there's still time if anybody wants to tweet or indeed do the Q&A app and add your question. But we've got a couple more here, so we'll go with those. This one that was right back at the beginning where you talked about Jesus retreating, getting up early, and it's about prayer. So can you just tell us a little bit about your journey of prayer throughout kind of church planting?
First of all, let me do not a confession, but I'm a corporate prayer more than a personal prayer. So first of all, I like being in a prayer group. Okay, I find that easier to pray sometimes. I mean, I walk my dog every day and I pray, so I've that. But I do like prayer meetings, and so I often start church plants with a prayer meeting. I mean, fundamentally, that's how I've done numbers. I've just gone and prayed. So for me, prayer is vital and important. I think you've got to find out a few things: who you are, how you're wired. So I'm always. I started with that slight confession because I think if you're not careful, I can start a church plant with a prayer meeting because I've got faith for it. I'm comfortable in it. I can run a good prayer meeting, and I can hear God in it. It's just For some others, actually, it's, you know, what Jesus did, quiet in the morning, and that's just the way they are. And so when they start a group, it would be with a Bible study or with some an outreach event. So for me, prayer is vital. It's finding how it works, and obviously, prayer personally, I've got my dog. We go out every morning, and then I come back and do some prayer as well. But I know when I'm energized, when I'm with a group, and we're finding God. So I do feel this, that I'm reading a Fraser who of the, it's called Fraser of Lesotho. I've got that. I go to the Lesotho people, so I've got the wrong word there. And but fundamentally, this missionary biography is just brilliant in terms of, he basically saw a load of people in the China area, their whole tribes won for Jesus through prayer. And I'm actually reading it now, being totally stirred and realizing he fought in prayer. And when I said about we're going to name it and claim it, and just made a little lightness of it, actually the story behind that is Sue was in the meeting, and it was a prayer meeting, and I actually stopped the meeting and I said these words. I said, do you know what, because we'd already started, you know, we're beginning to get a bit of a roll. I said, you know what, we could start a meeting in Bolton, we could suck it and see, you know. I just was a bit flippant, let's just, you know, let's have a go. And I felt God rebuke me, actually. And I was having a conversation with the group and a conversation with God simultaneously. As I was speaking, I was getting rebuked. And the rebuke was this: have I ever told you to suck it and see what I've told you to go and plant? And actually, there's a difference. So I actually stopped the meeting. I said, honestly, it's in a prayer meeting context, right? This is why I'm using this as an example. I'm saying, we're praying to God, could he do a church plant in Bolton? And I'm feeling God saying yes, because you're going to answer your prayers. So we're going to say, God, we've moved a mountain tonight, and we're going to name it now Bolton Family Church. And what it was is, it was a declaration that our prayers had done something. And so I don't know if that helps. So it's finding your own rhythm, it's finding who you are, it's finding confidence in prayer, knowing that actually some of these big mountains, new people coming, breakthrough, actually it's prayer that's going to make it happen, whether it's personal or corporate. So I think you need both. We used to do whole nights of prayer. I used to gather 200 or 300 of all our church plants, and we used to pray through the night. We've done numbers of different things. So
yeah. Really helpful, because you've given some really good examples with that one. This is our final question, and it's no small one either. So we'll end on this one, which is about right at the beginning, church plant started, lots of miracles happened. So what's been your experience of church planting and seeing the miraculous?
I haven't seen much of the people healed and demons fleeing. I've seen some. And we need to see more. So that's, first of all, that's where I'm at. In fact, I was talking at a conference, I say, that I alluded to a couple of weeks ago. Some guys were over from Coleraine, I think Seacoast Vineyard, I think it is, Coleraine, I forgot the name of the church. And they basically do healing on the streets. They've got some amazing things. So the person who is in charge of that, I just happened to spend the latter part of an evening with. I bumped into him and thought, I need this. And so fundamentally, I am exercised that we need to see more. And I think we are going to, I think, maybe get more help from them. We do see people healed. We do see things happen. I think we need to see more. So it's not been the number one strength of what we've been doing. I mean, people getting saved is a miracle. So don't poor people getting lifted out of poverty and off drink is a miracle, as well as some human intervention. So we're seeing numbers of miracles happen like that. I do feel we need to see more. So my feeling is, if we can plant this amount of churches that we've done without seeing, this numbers of supernatural, what would it be like with the move of God? And there's been seasons where we've seen more of the miraculous. When John Wimber first came to the UK, I was at his very first conference, virtually on the front row, lapping it up and actually really getting more and more into praying for people when the Toronto stuff happened. So there's been seasons when you feel like you've been in the flow, but I do feel we need to see more of it. But we are, I say, I'm probably underplaying a little bit, because I'm hungering for more and hungering for a move of God. But I think, I would say this, because some people can say, well, if I'm not talking about me, but for them, if personally they're not seeing the supernatural, well, maybe they can't do church planting. So I just want to counter the fact that actually God can use you and people getting saved. It's a supernatural thing, actually, churches being formed. There's a grace of God. There's a so, and I say we are praying more to see more of this happen, but I don't know if that is a bit of a waffly.
No, it's a very honest, but it's a very good place to finish, because we're hungry, aren't we, to see what God's going to do next. We're hungry for the miraculous. We're hungry for the ones, and we're hungry for the twos to get sent out to the ends of the earth. We're hungry for church plants to spring up. So I think it's a really brilliant place to finish. So I just want to say it's been a really great evening. I think that probably wraps up tonight. The questions have stopped coming in, and it's nearly past, so that's brilliant. Good timing. We hope that you felt inspired, encouraged, and again, if you genuinely feel maybe God is speaking to you about going and getting involved in a church plant, please do get in touch with us. We'd love to hear from you. And the word is to be watching your inbox for more news about broadcast. So just keep looking for when the next date pops up, because we'd love to have you join the conversation again. It's been a real treat, Colin. Thank you so much for taking us through that passage and sharing some of your heart with us this evening. And it just remains for me to just ask you guys, really, over the next kind of month, 2 months, to be praying for this venue in Didsbury. Let's pray for the miraculous to break out in our churches, in the UK, in the world. And finally, let's just pray for those ones and twos, because it would be fantastic to see this kind of go on and multiply, and see many people saved through church planting. So it's been a really great evening. Enjoy the football, people, for those of you that love it, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.